down the hammer and pick up the pencil. You're about to listen to the Savvy Radio Show. Learn from real-life real estate investors, experience revealed with the Savvy Landlord as your host.
What's up, Savvy investors? Yeah, this is your friend Steve VanCauwenbergh, the Savvy Landlord. You tuned in to the International Fame and something radio show called the Savvy Radio Show. That was a weak intro, but that's what we do on a Monday. It seems to be weak. So I'm going to tackle something that's different. Yes, different. So Monday is supposed to be Big Money Monday. If you followed me, 6-8 months ago, I was supposed to do my goal is to do something about money every Monday. And so I've been thinking, I have like a list of them that I've been writing, but I've never finished them. And I'm like, dude, I've got to get Big Money Monday out there. We need to learn about money. So anyway, I was talking about money with someone that brought a house opportunity to me. And I was like, so I wrote this podcast, or actually I'm not writing the podcast. I wrote the title for the podcast, and the title of the podcast is called Chasing the History of the Value of the Asset. All right, so you got to work with me. Let me say it again. Chasing the history so you can know the value of the asset. Okay. Yeah, that is a little ambiguous. And let me explain something to you. Now, this is a high-end neighborhood that a friend of mine is moving to. And then how do you create the value of a property in a bubble, right? Or how do you know what the real value of a property is when you're in the middle of a real estate bubble? And we are in the real estate bubble. I believe that we're at the top of the bubble. And I predict, I'm going to say it. I'm not Rich Dad Poor Dad, but this thing is going to start popping from a year from now. So whatever that means, I could be a nobody, which I may be, but the point is, so you've got to how do you know what the value of a property is, and who deems that? Well, nothing is worth anything until someone's willing to pay for it or put the money up. And so there's a property in Oklahoma City in a prestigious neighborhood, and when you do your due diligence, you got to chase the money. Okay, just like forensic accounting, you got to chase the money. Where is it coming? That's what the banker does to you. He's chasing the money. Are you really as wealthy as you think you are? Is the cash flow really coming in? And then there's a great thing that smart bankers do. They count depreciation or phantom income, and maybe we can cover a podcast on that. But let's for kicks and giggles, let me tell you or explain to you how I truly get a value of a property. And when you might think as a real estate investor or a newbie, you might well, can't you just get a comp from a realtor and that's like the end all, or an appraisal? Not necessarily. Yep. Because here's the thing. If a realtor pulls a comp, and all this is just tangible data that I have, I'm going to give you broad strokes here so you can use your mind and think and teach you to get to this point of figuring out what the real value is. But in the same exact neighborhood, I got a comp from somebody. My friend gave me this information, and I got this comp. Well, the comp was skewed because the house was built, not this one I'm talking about, but another comp from another house in the same neighborhood, that the house was built in 1992. Well, the comps that this realtor pulled they had some houses that were built in 2000. They had some houses that were built in 2005. They had some houses built in 91 and 92. So and 92 was the one they're basing it off of, or trying to pull a comp on. So just right there, the price was inflated because they were pulling a comp from a house from 2006 or 2005 and trying to equate it to a house that's, 10 or 15 years, or actually 20 years, comparable. Construction's different, and so on and so forth. So you've got to get your detailed mind rolling when you're looking at a deal. So the title is Chasing the History. So what I do is I figure out how long they've owned the property. So a lot of houses in this neighborhood, nobody really moves. Most of the owners have built their property and stayed there. I don't have the real data of 15 years, but this property that I'm talking about is very interesting, and which is fascinates me, where people are losing money. And you, as a real estate investor, you're making money. But this, to me, this is just a typical way that people buy homes and they're failing and they're not doing well and they're losing money. And so let me give you perspective. So this house is a 3,631 square foot crib in Oklahoma City in a nice neighborhood. Year it was built was 2012. This individual bought this property or built this property in 2002. Apparently, the actual loan, probably the construction loan, was in the value of $307,000 back then. Now, that's a lot of money. Now, 15 years later, you should get appreciation. Now, what the value of the home right now that I saw was listed, okay? Now, today, 15 years later, our boy Zillow says it's worth $553,000. Okay, that's what Zillow says, and these folks listed the property for $525 in June 29th of 2017. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down so you can understand what the F's going on. Hopefully, if you're buying in a home and just take a zero off or add a zero on, it all applies to. And I'm just using this house because it's such a big swing. And there's a lot of transactions in this deal. And so you can gauge and you can find the history. Okay. I know that's elaborate. So let me give you some perspective. So they built it in 2002 for $307,000, their construction loan. These folks lived in it for 8 years and they sold it for $345,000. So now at 2010, again, there's cycles, the economy, all those things. I'm not covering that right now, but those definitely play a part in the value of a property, in the value of your own home. So you might, at this podcast, you might not necessarily be an investor, but you should be a homeowner in the value of your property. Is it a forced appreciation? Do you want appreciation on the way out? So in 2010, these people sold the property. They bought the property for $345,000. Now, they lived in the property for about almost 2.5 years. They sold the property from $345,000, lived in it for 2.5 years, and sold it for $490,000. Wow, $490,000. Now, those poor people, they bought the property for $490,000 in August of 2013, and they lived in it for exactly 14 months. They sold it from $490,000 to $500,000 in 1 year. Now, you as an average person, wow, man, they made 10 G's. No, they didn't, because they probably used a realtor. Using the realtor, 6%. What's 6%? $30,000 of commission. Okay, so 500,000 minus 30 is 470. They bought it for 490. They've only owned it for 2 years. They have no equity. They actually lost money, logically. But they're lucky because they got out, barely got out. So now we're in 2014. Those people sold it to a family and took a loss. They lived in it for 1 year, exactly, from November to January. And of course, they probably sat out of the market 30 to 60 days, and they sold it. They bought it for $500,000, and they sold it in 2015 for $475,000. Crazy. Okay, so let's recap real fast, and I'm gonna break some knowledge on you here. So someone built it for $307,000. They sold it for $345,000. An okay gain. They lived in it for 8 years. They're probably happy and moved on. The person that made a killing was in 2010. They sold it from $345,000 to $490,000. Bang, bang. Now, the $490,000 people barely got out at the right time, because they sold it a year later in 2014 for $500,000. They got scathed. They just got a couple of bumps and bruises. Now, the 500 people were like, we got to get out of this deal. And they sold it for a loss at $475,000 plus real estate commissions. I mean, these people took a bath. They probably lost $50,000 or more. Okay. Now, here's the thing. This is what you got to pay attention to. It is August, almost September 2017, and they listed that property in June for $525. Now, when you look at the pictures, now you got to ask yourself, what's going on here, VanCauwenbergh? What's happening? Well, first of all, realtors are involved. That's what's happening, and I'm not bagging on realtors, but these poor people have to inflate the price, not the real price, so they can pay real estate commissions of 6%. So these poor people are trapped. It's June. They're like, we got to move. I don't know why they got to move, but they ramped it up for to $525 to break even. And so they had it for a whole month. And then in July 27, 2017, these folks lowered the price down to $499. Okay, now we're still don't have the commission paid for. We're short $10,000 plus inspection repairs, holding costs, la da da da. Okay, man, my heart just breaks for these people, and I can tell you where it went wrong. So then you get all starry-eyed, right? Wow, Zillow says it's worth $553,000. Bogus. The realtor tells them it's worth that much money. Bogus. Now, do some math. If you go to the county assessor, and the county assessor in 2016 says that the property is worth $498,000 is what they're paying tax on it. That's the value. And they're paying the tax rate on that. But they reassessed it. That came out, and now it's at a value of $479,000. Wow. Okay. So now they bought it 2015 for $475,000, these poor people. In 2017, the value of the property is $479,000. And they're trying to sell it at $525,000, and then they lowered it. What does this translate to you? That's the question. What does it translate? Well, to me, it looks like a lot of desperation. So then you got to dig a little bit deeper. Then you got to look at, what does the structure look like? What's the situation of the structure? And sure enough, it looks amazing. The kitchen, I'm looking at these photos. Dude, somebody, somewhere, probably the $490 mark, dropped $30,000 or more into the kitchen. But here's the thing. The kitchen is outrageous. It looks like some lodge. I mean, it's like effing gorgeous. The cabinets, antique-ish with gray. Silver, the stove is like a $6,000 stove. They have a hood that comes from the ceiling. That stove is probably a $10,000 stove. The hood that's coming down is a G. They got, the bar stools. They're outrageous. They're probably $400 bar stools. But here's the thing. Now, of course, for one of my friends, I'm going to walk the property. And so when you really dig into this property, a lot of things were an afterthought. Meaning, like the flooring, they spent all this money remodeling it. I don't know when or where. And this is not my property, so I haven't really dug into it. But they forgot to change out the floor tile. The floor tile looks like a Mexican restaurant. We're in a high-end neighborhood in a nice kind of stucco/rock house with Hispanic Mexican restaurant floor. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's an old style orange and red, kind of like a flagstone color, and you're trying to paint your cabinets gray. It just clashes. Then when I walk the property, I was like, look, this is a lot of unusual space. When you walk into the property, the front door, it wasn't a grand entrance. It was like, ooh, we're in a closet. And then you look to the left, there's a room with no closet. And then you look across from the entryway, there's an office with no closet. So 2 unusable rooms, right? Then this horrible floor. And then it just goes on and on. And then you look at the master bathroom, and then they just threw the toilet in, and it looks like they put it in the wrong place. And then there's just a lot of things. Now, here's the thing. Here's your problem. You have this asset. I don't know why these people are moving, but they're going to choke out. And see, this is the point. To find a true value to a property, you got to go back to the history and find out how they got there. And these people are probably going to take a bath, or they're going to go into foreclosure, or they're going to hold on, or they can't live their dreams because they're stuck with a property that they can't sell. And why are they selling? So that is your Big Money Monday that I have not done in a long time. I don't know if this helps you anyway. Hopefully, I gave you some perspective on how deep you should go with your due diligence. How bad do you really want the property equates to how much work you want to do it. If you're going to get married, right, and the statistic is 50% of marriages fail, people spend more time planning their wedding than they do trying to buy a property. So you, as a real estate investor, look at the taxes. When do they pay the taxes? When do they assess them? How does it get assessed? Why do these people sell the property? Why didn't they fix the floor? What's going on? And then you can get a perspective. This is not perfect science. This is just history. So the lesson today, go back and even trace down your house, the house that you're living in. You may be happy. How do they derive to that number? And are you getting appreciation or are you losing money? When is the opportunity to sell your property, and when should you sell your property? And this is the data that you need. Now, we're at the height of the market. Bang, bang. If your barber is talking about investing in real estate, you should probably be selling. Now, these poor people, if it's at the height of the market in a very desirable neighborhood, and you drop it down by $25,000 in 30 days, you're desperate. So then you have to get to your wife or whoever you're living with and say, hey, we got to have a plan here. It's not going well. What's the worst case scenario? So you might want to drop that realtor, and you may want to be creative and find someone to put a large down payment down so you can assume the loan and move on and get this headache off your back. Now, this is a $500,000 house. I don't know if I would do that so much, but I have considered it in a property that I own, and my residence is not $500,000, but I live in a 250 plus home. You really need to think about, how can I unload this thing, and when is a good time? And you got to keep track of the sales cycle or the real estate cycle. When are we getting hot? When are we getting low? When should I say, do I have built-in equity? Is it worth putting in a pool? Is it worth taking out a pool? Is it worth fixing the floor? If it was me, now these people are trapped, right? They bought the property for $475,000 and they thought they got a deal. But the people before them that got scathed on the way out were the smart people. And so if I was going to buy that property at $475 and they probably negotiated down, they probably didn't like the floor. That's when you should have put the floor in, because you already had that cost if you were going to sell. So the question that these poor people, if I needed to advise them, they called the Savvy Radio Show up and they heard me and they're like, I need you to advise me. I'm struggling. Well, freaking, you got two options. Foreclose, like run to the hills, or dig deeper and you're going to keep holding out, or enjoy the neighborhood and don't move out and build more equity, or tear up that nasty floor and redo the floor, and it's going to cost you about 15 G's because you got a 3,000 square foot house, probably going to be $5 a square, even if you do it yourself. And that's what I would suggest. Is $15,000 worth more to sell a $500,000 house? You have to ask that question. And I do have a podcast coming up pretty soon, and this all relates to some podcasts that I got rolling. So stay tuned. I know this was all over the place, and I really didn't have a defined message. But I'm going to leave you with this question to ponder. Let's say you're overweight. I was overweight. And would I pay $1,500 to lose 20 pounds? Would you ask yourself that question? Would you spend $1,500 greenbacks to lose weight? Well, think about it. We'll answer it on another podcast. My name is Stephen VanCauwenbergh. This was one of my very unique, weird, random, sucky podcasts. But I need my folks that are following me. If this was a good one for you, holla at your boy. Let me know, because I wrote one line down: chasing the history of the value of an asset. And I looked at the county assessor and I looked at the Zillow app, and we got 20 minutes of something. Hopefully it was powerful for you. Hopefully it was enough for you to go out there and buy assets. You buy assets, you can do more.
Thanks for listening to the Savvy Radio Show. Glide online and listen to our other motivating episodes at savvyradioshow.com. Connect on Twitter at LandlordBook and always be buying assets.